All right, guys, we are getting it. We're actually live right now through YouTube. I am trying to get everything live out on Facebook as well. But welcome everybody to the August Training Talk Show. I'm going to hand things over to Deryck real quick. He's coming in from the middle of I don't know where, in the middle of his mobile office. But Deryck, man, take it.
Hey, I want to thank everybody for tuning in to our Training Talk, sponsored and brought to you live by Primary Arms Online. I apologize for my Botex lighting and on the roadness. I'm actually in the FJ headed to a tour stop to meet up with Jeff Abraham. We got a 3-day instructor development class going on just outside Atlanta. And thanks to the weather and Florida traffic and me, instead of being live with Jeff in the same spot, I am still in the car. So, how you doing, Jeff? Thanks for jumping on with us.
No problem. I'm doing well. Looking forward to working this weekend with you.
And thanks to Barret. Barret's got a lot of stuff going on with the tour as well. So he had to multitask a lot today to make sure that we got everything up and running. For those who don't know, Barret is usually the head honcho, the central hub for getting these shows up and running and out to all the different social media platforms for everybody. How are we looking, Barret?
We're close. We're really close.
All right.
You hear those keys going.
Yeah, I know.
So we always kind of joke around that we live the counter ambush lifestyle, because that's about what it always is, right? Is that, last minute, oh, by the way, things got in the way, and now Deryck's not going to be able to be at the hotel room, on time tonight for the show, even though he, made plans to be there hours earlier, right? Things happen. So you kind of figure it out. We always joke around on the range that, what we have to have on the range is a dirt berm and a couple of targets, or not even targets, just spray paint or pencils in the mud kind of thing, and we'll figure the rest out. And if you watch this show, if you're still watching this show, that's because you know that we will figure it out. We're going to have a good time anyway.
Exactly.
Absolutely. As long as I got at least 2 bars and we got Zoom, we're still doing it.
Absolutely. And we're almost up. We're really, really close. I promise you.
So,
where are you right now, Deryck?
I am just coming up, getting close to my exit. I'm on 75 outside of Atlanta. Got about 4 more miles before I jump off 75 and head over towards Jeff. Our class is in Covington, Georgia. Correct, Jeff?
Covington, Georgia, South River Gun Club.
Yep. So not Covington, Louisiana, Barret. Covington, Georgia.
Right. I don't know. I kind of like Covington, Louisiana. So it's kind of interesting. I've never been to Covington, Georgia. I've been all around there. I've been to Atlanta, been to Macon, have probably driven within a couple of miles of Covington. But those of y'all that know me know that I was born and raised in Covington, Louisiana. So same name, different place. Maybe it's a great town. Who knows?
Well, when I put it in my GPS this morning and it started beeping, I didn't even pay attention. And it originally had me going to Covington, Louisiana.
Yeah, that happens to me sometimes when I try to put my name in, or put that in, or maybe look for somewhere to eat, and it brings up the wrong Covington. All right, so I'm just going to verify real quick, but I think we're now live on.
I saw Facebook come live.
All right, so that must have been you talking. So cool.
Yeah,
we've got people tuning in. So welcome to the show, everybody. We're glad to have everyone for the Training Talk for the August show. Tonight's topic that we'll jump into in a couple of minutes is all about active killer response, right? I'm a parent. I've got a 7-year-old and an almost 10-year-old that will start back at school here in a few days. Many of the people tuning in, have our parents of children as well going back, or maybe teachers, or like Jeff's on the show. He hangs out around the school property, as a coach, a pretty special coach at that. But yeah, so and obviously Deryck's a subject matter expert as well on the topic. And so, we're talking about active killer response coming back to school, and there's a lot to be said about that. And we'll try to, tone down, some of the emotions that come along with it and really talk about a little bit about real statistics as well going with it. But we're excited to have you all on the show. If you've got questions or you got comments, feel free to drop them in on YouTube, Facebook, or those of y'all that are tuning in directly from the personaldefensenetwork.com page. Tonight's show is brought to you by Primary Arms Online. Many of y'all have already jumped on their website and checked things out. We've mentioned before, great website for buying guns and accessories. They throw all kind of specials out. If you haven't provided your email address to them, I certainly would recommend doing so. I did, before they came on as a tour sponsor and or a show sponsor at that. But it's really, I've purchased several accessories off of the specials that have come through the emails. So if you haven't seen those, I'd get them. They send out 10% off coupons, 12% off coupons. And it seems like every couple of days as well. But tonight's show is brought to you by Primary Arms Online. So I'm back in the show. As you see, Deryck, he's coming in from the FJ, right? From the mobile office, going from his home state of Southern Florida up near Jeff Abraham in Covington, Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia area, where Deryck will be teaching on the training tour this weekend. I had to figure out what day it was. This weekend for a level 1 USCCA and defensive shooting fundamentals instructor class. I just came back. I think last time that we were on the show, we were talking about the class that I was going to have in Fort Worth. So I just had that show in Fort Worth, and then also just came back from nice sunny Florida with I think we hit triple digits, or at least it felt like a couple hundred digits in temperatures each day. But thankfully the rain held off for us. But yeah, we're right in the middle of the training tour. So if you haven't had an opportunity to jump in on a class, look at the website, because there's a lot of opportunities with myself teaching, Deryck teaching, Rob teaching, and numerous other fantastic instructors that have been vetted and are part of the Personal Defense Network training team. So there's definitely classes going on from the East Coast to the West Coast, and bordering Mexico to Canada as well. And so welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks, man. Jeff's actually a PDN contributor as well. Jeff, are you doing any training tour classes?
I'm not doing any training tour classes this year. I will be doing some of the intuitive defensive shooting classes, but it won't be part of the training tour just because we couldn't get the schedule to work out.
Okay.
But Jeff teaches regularly in the Atlanta area. So if you've got an opportunity to jump into one of his classes, then it would certainly be doing yourself a good favor on training, as well as a great time with Jeff. We've got people that looks like they're commenting. We got some people coming in from Texas tonight. One person, Rick Medley, coming from the hospital bed. Hey man, Rick, we certainly heard about you, brother. We are, you've been in our thoughts. We've been praying for you and hope that you are able to get out of that hospital bed, pretty quickly. San Francisco, California tonight, as well as, from Texas.
Awesome.
Did we lose Deryck already?
We lost his video, it looks like.
Okay. I'm only showing. Interesting. Yeah, I've got you, but for some reason, okay, there you came back. Let me make sure I've got the view set up correctly on the screen. I do. I don't know why. You dropped out there for a second from the video, but as soon as you started talking, you came back. So make sure you talk plenty tonight.
It could be because I don't know where I'm going. So let's a quick test. If I jump over to my GPS.
Yes.
Yeah, we definitely lost you. You showed up as Deryck Poole's iPhone. So if you're wondering what kind of phone Deryck has, he apparently is an iPhone fan.
Yeah, every once in a while I'm going to have to jump over to the GPS side because I don't know where I'm going. But I don't know, like if I could turn the camera around. Here, I'm right in front of, I don't know if you can see it or not, Summit Racing, which is kind of cool.
Oh, you pulled over?
No, I'm on my exit headed over towards Jeff. I still got like another 20 miles or so to go, but sitting here waiting for the light. Feel like I've been waiting forever.
Nice.
Yeah.
Fun.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, tonight's topic, active shooter, active killer response in regards to schools. Whether you're a parent or you're a teacher or you're someone that works around or maybe volunteers on a school property. And obviously, all of this stuff that we talk about tonight really goes well beyond the educational facilities or school property or school sponsored functions. Obviously starting back at school, in the description, we talked about how it's always good to review with yourself or with your loved ones that are going to be around, what is the security plan? What to do in the worst case event that something bad happens. And I always like to remind people anytime we're talking about active killer response, especially when I'm sitting there prepping my kids to go to school and that kind of stuff, that although we think about it a tremendous amount, we put a lot of emotion into it, that ultimately we also have to remember that there's not a lot of these events that take place. If we go back, to the beginning of really where we started tracking this stuff heavily, and it wasn't the beginning, but it's really where we started tracking this stuff, and go back to the Columbine shooting in Colorado. If that event moving forward, it's not like there are hundreds of these events every single year. When you truly define it as an active killer situation or active shooter event, if we see a lot of talk in the news and the media about mass killings that is defined differently among different people. But if we define that as 4 or more people that are shot in the same location, well, then that if we lay out that umbrella, it brings in a tremendous amount of numbers because it brings in everything. We talk about drug violence in the sense that somebody's driving down the road, sees someone who's selling drugs on their turf and doesn't want them there and starts shooting at them in a drive-by shooting and hits 4 innocent bystanders. Well, that ends up getting classified as a mass shooting. Although it's very different than the situation where somebody intentionally shows up to a school and is intending to harm as many people as they can, right? Those are very different circumstances. And so the FBI has and the Department of Homeland Security draws a very hard line, between what they consider an active shooter situation and just a mass shooting in general. Not all active shooter situations will even meet the definition of the mass shooting as well. When we talk about the active shooter, active killer, we're talking about someone who is intending to harm others, right? It may be at a single location. It may be as a spree killer in multiple locations moving around. But we're talking about somebody randomly targeting others inside of, in the context of tonight's show, inside of an educational facility or on the property of school-sponsored functions and whatnot. So when we highlight that down to something like a true active shooter event, there aren't a tremendous amount of them. And I'm actually going to see if I can screen share something real quick to show a chart that I put together. And I just happen to have it on my screen unrelated to tonight's show. But let's see if I can share this real quick. Let's see. All right, so I think that I did. I was able to get that over successful. So this chart that you're looking at represents active shooter events, true active shooter events from the year 2000 of Columbine, fast forwarding all the way through 2020. And there's a couple of things that we can learn from this. So I don't know how well the numbers come over, but if you look at the numbers of the last few years, 2017, 30 events, 2018, 27 events, 2019, 30 events, and then 2020, 40 events. Now,
those are events, right? They're not deaths. Those are events.
Those are events. That is correct.
Yeah.
These are all representative of the amount of events that took place in the United States each year. And when you see that, right? I mean, 40 honestly for 2020, that's a number that caught me by surprise. I figured that, based on the fact that we spent a tremendous amount of time locked down last year, that there weren't a lot of people in the public environments, that number would have gone down tremendously, but it actually was up, I think, 30 something percent, over last year. But from 2000 to 2000 and now 21, year after year, you can see that it's trending up, right? Is that these events that more and more are happening, but even when you look at those numbers, statistically, we have to understand that it's the complete anomaly, right? It's not something that is happening all the time, but it's something that happens as the anomaly. So what do we mean by that? What do I mean by that? Ultimately, I mean that none of our family members or even you as a teacher should have to show up at school this week or next week or whenever you go back and be in fear of something taking place. Because if we're talking about the risk of dangers in life, if there were 40 events in 2020, think about how many people did not have to deal with an active shooter situation in 2020 or any of the years coming from 2000, right? And so we have to understand that is that we don't need to leave our houses in fear. Just like you don't need to leave your house or your kids don't need to leave the house and go to school in fear that the building is going to catch on fire while they're at school. We know that, statistically that the last time somebody has died in a school fire was, I believe, back in the 1950s. So it's been 70 plus years since someone has died in a school fire, but still most schools throughout the United States dedicate a lot of resources on that topic, right? A lot of schools do, monthly fire drills that are mandatory fire drills. You've got the fire marshal that is involved in everything in regards to how the buildings are spec'd out when they're building them, to how the drills are being run, to how the doors can be, forced locked open, can't shut, egress points, right? We spend a tremendous amount of resources going into fire, even though it's been 70-ish years since someone has died in a school fire. But statistically, the active shooter event is still not far off from that situation. Meaning we don't need to leave our house in fear, but we still need to have a plan for it. We still need to be prepared, in the case that something bad like that does happen. And so that's really what tonight's show is about, is understanding, don't go to school scared. Don't send your kids to school scared. Even if another event happens, they should not have to be in fear of going to school. So we need to make sure as parents that we're setting that mood correctly as well, that we're not instilling the fear, that they're not reading the emotional in us thinking we're scared to send the kids to school, right? And so if we're going to talk about the risk of things happening, well, there's a lot more risky things that happen in life, right? Like automobile accidents. We know that far more people are going to die in an automobile accident than an active shooter situation from day to day. But typically speaking, people don't leave the houses that are super concerned about that automobile accident. Even though this summer, I think that I've witnessed, 2 overturned vehicles on the interstate, pretty severe accidents, right? Just local to me 2 nights ago, very horrible story. 4 teenage girls in a car driving, ended up going off the road, running into, I believe, a utility pole, and two 16-year-old girls were killed on impact. Right? That's something that is real. That's something that happens all the time, and clearly it's a horrible situation. But at the same time, when we leave our houses, that should not be a really big fear, because we don't have the expectation that something like that is going to take place. But we still put plans in place, right? We take the driving classes, we learn how to drive, we get the experience in doing that kind of stuff. We wear the seatbelt, we have insurance on the cars in the event that something bad happens, that even on the very lower end of things, to be able to repair the damages, right? And that's the kind of the way that I look at going to school and preparing for the active killer event is, don't be scared, don't live life in fear, but also in the event that something does happen, be prepared, have a plan in place, know some things that you can do to be able to truly increase the survivability rates for yourself or somebody else. I'm going to take a breather and drink a cup of water.
So Barret, you have two young, both of your boys are younger in school. Does their school have a plan in place that they teach the students what to do in the event of an active shooter or a spree killer showing up to the school?
I'm going to generalize this and not really give out a plan of a specific school, right? But generally speaking, a lot of schools are truly worried about empowering the students or giving them the freedom to make their own decisions and really feel that they're in charge of the accountability, right? Everything that we do with teachers and with the admin and staff is all about protecting the kids and keeping accountability, right? I want to know that if I call the school up and I ask the question, where's my child, that I should be able to get that answer. That we have that expectation. So a lot of schools are putting the responsibility on the teachers. And I do provide active shooter training, for different schools and businesses and that sort of thing. And one thing that I've learned in talking to a lot of teachers over the years is there's a lot of schools that, maybe they provided some training. They're supposed to get the training on an annual basis, but they haven't gone through any training in years. And, and even when they took the training, it was very generalized. It wasn't about empowerment. It was just on the very basic federal model of run, hide, fight, right? If you can run, run. If you can't hide, and if you have to fight, fight. But they don't really go into heavy specifics on that. And so when I teach these kind of classes, what I try to really drive home and instill with anyone that I'm training along that line, whether it's a student or teacher or faculty member, is I want to empower them to be able to act at times outside of the policy, right? And so there are teachers, at different schools that, they're getting the training and we expect them to be able to do the right thing. But when I send my kids to school, I don't, at the same time, at 6 and almost 10, I don't put the responsibility of the best course of action in someone else's hands, right? I try to teach that to my kids. In the event that something takes place, my child is capable of making a better decision than someone else, then I want my child to make the best decision, regardless of what the teacher says. Regardless of what the manual says, regardless of what the red tape, bureaucracy, and faculty and school boards have said, I want them to make the best decision for themselves. And that ultimately is the same thing that I would tell anybody else for that matter, is that you've got to empower your kids to make the best decision. If the goal is safety, then sometimes the manual gets in the way, right? Sometimes the accountability gets in the way. And so we have to look at, if the goal is safety and security, then what's the best way that we're going to be able to achieve that? And so the run, hide, fight model that is the accepted standard, we can really define and provide a lot more options and a lot more opportunity to really increase that survivability rate. So we already know that if someone is not where the attack is, then it's extremely hard for that attacker to harm someone. And so that's always the top of the line right there, that I'm going to tell my kids that if you've got danger, right, you got a bad person there that's doing bad things and you have the opportunity to get away, then get away. Now, I'm telling a 6-year-old that, right? Or a 7-year-old that. And so if I'm telling a 7-year-old that regardless of what the teacher says, if you can get away from danger, get away from danger, I'm literally giving my child permission, to leave the staff, leave the teachers and go away. And, that coming from the perspective of the school, those are always going to be hard instructions to give to any child, right? And so that's, where I'm about empowerment. I want to empower the teachers as well and empower all the staff. But at the same time, you've got to at times make the best choice for the individual.
When you look at some of the active shooter situations out there, generally the folks that, and this is a generalization, but when you look at the statistics, the folks that sat in place were the folks that got themselves into trouble. The folks that moved, some may have been injured, some may have not survived, but the larger percentage of them survived. And the mindset change in the school system is kind of interesting. I grew up in California. Where I grew up, we had fires. In 4th grade, the fires were encroaching on the valley where I grew up. And we did fire drills. We did all kinds of stuff. Well, at some point, it crossed the line. They came over the loudspeaker system in the schools, and we're in 4th grade. And they said, it's crossed the line. The fire is too close. We're excusing everybody from school. Execute your escape plan and your fire plan that we put together. And we all left the school. Unsupervised, no notice to the parents, and nobody got hurt.
Yeah, and that's the kind of proactive response that ultimately that needs to take place. And if you look, and I mean, there's some very really, I guess I hate to say them good examples, but there's some very clear scenarios or situations that have taken place where you have seen some very different courses of action among the classrooms in a classroom setting with an active killer on the campus, and extremely different outcomes. 2012, Sandy Hook, elementary school, where somebody shoots their way through the glass and forces their way and goes room to room. Well, I mean, they had just done some active shooter training just before this event. So I think one of the teachers actually still had some construction paper or something that was covering up the windows. So, she locked the door, turned the lights off, and hid all the kids in one of the back areas. And the shooter, just assumed that there was nobody inside of that room because lights out, nobody's home, right? And then you had other teachers that were unable to have that sort of response because they were the attack was initiated. But even then, you had very different outcomes that took place, where at Sandy Hook, I mean, you literally had a group of 6-year-olds that ran out of the classroom in the middle of the shooting, left everybody else in there, but on their own, they ran out of the classroom. I don't remember the number, but roughly a half dozen 6-year-olds ran out of the classroom, ran out of the school, ran off of the property, and were found in the driveway in a neighborhood nearby by the resident who lives there. And so, I mean, everything about us tells us, wait, 6-year-olds ran away from the property and outside of that school setting where there was literally zero accountability. Well, couldn't they have faced other dangers in life? Well, yeah, there's the risk of something like that happening. But because of the decisions that were made by 6-year-olds, they lived. Right? Physically, they survived that incident. And that's huge. Or Virginia Tech, where a gunman shows up on the school property and changes the doors closed, goes up to the 2nd floor and goes room to room to room. Some people, unfortunately, some of the rooms, they couldn't respond like some of the others, again, because they were where the attack happened. Right? And so the response is dictated by proximity. We know that, right? But some of the classrooms there were capable of barricading and preventing somebody, from fighting the attacker from coming in the room while people were jumping out of the window. 2nd floor window, people were jumping out, and almost everybody, was uninjured leaving that room. Another room where they were able to prevent the attacker from coming in. Another room where, people inside the room attacked the attacker as he came in. And there were injuries and people died, and they also saved the lives of multiple others that were inside of that room. And so the rooms that took a proactive response fared, far better than the rooms that did not have a chance to do anything or did not do anything proactively, when that incident, took place. And so I think that any planning that we're sending the kids off to school with, or like, again, as a teacher that you're going off to school with, It needs to be extremely proactive and empowers people to make the best decision based on the circumstances that are happening right now, right? Not based on what's going to happen in 10 minutes, not based on necessarily the SOPs or the policy, but what's the best answer right now? And that's why I say, if we can get away from the attacker, you can escape, we can figure the other stuff out later on. It's not any different than when my kids were first old enough to be able to open and climb out the windows in the house. You know, we rehearsed, we talked about in the event that there's a fire in the house, right? Don't wait for us. You know, if you can get out of the window and get out of the house, you know, meet us here where we had a designated location, right? We talked about that. We could do the same thing with all kinds of different ages and sending them off to school. And, you know, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, they can make decisions at that, right? We don't want them to have to make that, you know, but they can make some of those decisions at time. When you're talking about much younger, well, then, yeah, unfortunately, you know, we're putting a lot of responsibility, you know, on the schools or the staff or the teachers to make the best choice at that point. And same thing, if the teacher can get the kids away, then let's get the kids away. But if not, how do we make it harder for the attacker to be able to harm someone? And so that's just about putting different measures in place, you know, doing anything that we can do to make it more difficult. So barricading. So it's a lot. What's that?
Oh, no, I was saying
I think Deryck's going in and out. Jeff, are you getting him in and out as well?
I am getting him in and out.
Okay, so I think he's must be losing his signal. I don't know if you can hear us, Deryck. You lost your signal a little bit. Maybe it'll come back. I see the green light. I see your hands up. Maybe run inside really quickly and jump in the other camera.
not there quite yet.
But yeah, I mean, it's what can you do, you know, to make it harder for that attacker? And, you know, that under the federal model is hide. Let's do a lot more than hiding, right? Let's be proactive. Let's barricade. Let's shut doors. Let's lock doors. Let's pile stuff in front of doors. Let's do things to tie doors closed when we can do things to tie doors closed. You know, we may be proactive ahead of time and have better ways to, you know, to be able to secure that door. You know, put things in front of the glass, you know, whether that be desk or tables stacked up or, you know, shades that you can pull down. If you've got the opportunity to block the line of sight into the room, you know, do those kind of things, right? And be very proactive. You know, get to a position that if, you know, knowing that if someone came in that room, their eyes highly likely coming in the room are going to be where the door is opening, right? More in a forward position. And so, you know, not hiding or not stacking up directly in front of the room, but trying to put as many barriers in place. But then, you know, the fight part, right, of the run, hide, fight is, I mean, that's where you got to be nasty. You got to be willing, you know, to be more violent than the attacker. And I don't care who you are, everybody has violence in them, right? Is that you've got the ability to be violent, that your scale and what you're willing to be violent under changes. You know, you've got plenty of moms that are like, oh, I'm not a violent person, but yet, you know, you put somebody else trying to harm their child and all of a sudden they become a violent person, right? They're willing to do the things necessary to protect their kids. And in the event that you've got a fight in an active killer situation, you know, that's when it's time to be violent. That's not when it's time to play fair. That's when it's time to grab every single advantage that you can grab and count on the fact that you're the only person that's going to do something, right?
It's really no different than any other defensive situation, whether it's in your house, you know, at your work, or at the school. It's if you have to respond, there's no rules at that point. You're responding because your life and the lives around you depend on it, and the rules go out the window. There's no guarantee that you're going to survive, but the goal is hopefully you survive at a minimum. Hopefully you help others survive, but you're buying time. You're buying time for the response.
Yeah, that's it. You know, you're delaying ultimately until You have, other people there coming with guns that are actively trying to engage and find the attacker, make the attack stop. Right. And that's exactly what you're doing, is that you can't count on anybody else getting there in time, because it doesn't matter what the response time is. If you're there where the attack is taking place, you're the one that you can depend on. Right. Just like home defense, like you said, Jeff. And it's the same thing when I'm teaching home defense classes. I'm like, look, guys, I'm talking about it like this, but understand that this also applies to workplace violence. It also applies to the active killer situation. Is if you don't have to face the attacker, don't face the attacker. But if you do, then, do what you have to do to achieve the goal of safety. And so at times, maybe that is, you can't count on people, but if you've got the time, even as a teacher with the younger kids in the classroom, empower them to grab something to throw at the attacker, right? I remember, I think it was the Alabama school system a couple of years ago that received a lot of flack for, teaching kids to throw soup cans or rocks or something like that at the attacker. But look, if you can cause that attacker to pause, just for a moment, to be able to initiate an attack against that person, that can give you the advantage. So if you can empower people, right? Maybe you've got other people throwing stuff while you're there closer, stacked up on the door, ready to grab, deflect the gun, attack the attacker, tackle the attacker, break through the body of the attacker, right? Hit him with the fire extinguisher, spray him with the fire extinguisher. Right? There's so many different things that you can do, even in an environment that traditionally is not allowing people to carry the weapons to protect themselves. Right? There's so many improvised things. I was doing active shooter training for a school a few years ago. And one of the things that I did was, I just kind of went room to room and observed in every single room, what it looked like, what was the setup, what were some of the issues that individual teachers may face. And at the same time, as I went through, I took pictures of everything that I could look at that, wow, that actually really could be a great weapon in this situation. Right. And just about every single classroom, obviously, you're going to have the obvious stuff, like scissors, but then you had other stuff at different times, like knitting needles or, baseball bats or, a stack of wood or something like wood blocks that, could be thrown. There's just all kinds of different stuff in the environment that can be improvised in a situation to be able to, to make it harder for that person to hurt someone or to take the attack back to them.
When you listen to what's being said here, one of the differences, I think, when we talk about it and we talk about it to our students is, to me, this is a very positive approach. This is not an approach out of fear. I wrote an article that got published at Personal Defense Network, and it talked about the greatest defensive tool you have. And the greatest defensive tool you have, in my eyes, is your mindset. Your mindset in that situation has a lot to do with how you survive, how you make it through that situation. When we educate the students, when we educate the kids, when we educate the teachers with an empowerment methodology as opposed to a fear methodology, then they can take action, much like we did when I was in 4th grade and we had the fires approaching. There wasn't fear in the kids. There wasn't panic in the kids. We had a plan. We each person put a plan together for their own personal house and their families. They practiced it. It was a matter of fact. We did the same thing for earthquakes. And when it was time for us to respond, they basically said, it's time for you to put it into place. And everybody just moved. Everybody did what they were taught to do. And I think that was because it was taught from really a positive action empowerment mentality, as opposed to this fear of this monster coming in to shoot us, which is the case, but that's not how you educate people.
No, absolutely. All of that is very true, extremely true on that. I'm trying to bring up, see what the comments are taking. Deryck, you still driving down the road?
Yep, sure am. Is my signal better now?
I think it is. You sound better. I can even see you. You must be back into the city, hanging out in the Covington.
Yep. Yeah, I'm actually in in a little town. I think I'm getting a lot closer to Jeff. Now I'm like making sure I don't go blowing by the road. But when you were talking, right, I don't know if you could see me holding this thing up. I was like driving down the road and I like tried to find a light and I was like just a simple widget. You know, I travel with one of these all the time. I know you do too.
Yep.
Yeah, that's something. That's a simple tool that somebody could keep in a classroom. You know, to wedge a door to make it that much harder for somebody to get in.
And they even make ones that you can put into the locking mechanism for doors that open out. They're inexpensive. They're small. So you know everyone should have them. Everyone.
And I agree. And that's one of those things that, you know, the school with resources and everything else is only going to be able to provide so much. And so, you know, if I was sending high school kids off to school, I don't see a reason why not to be able to, you know, send them off with something like that in the book bag, right? That's going to be beneficial for, you know, numerous things in life. I stay in hotel rooms every once in a while that I'm really glad that I travel with that extra doorstop, because I don't trust the locks, or, you know, I got stuck in a hotel not long ago because there wasn't anything else available. That, man, the door between me and the adjoining room, it like flexed, and there wasn't like a double door that you normally have. At least it didn't seem like it. Well, maybe it was a double door, but it was, you know, dual like interior doors. They were flimsy. Yeah. I didn't trust them. Deryck knows at times I'm a hard sleeper, so, you know, I had the extra widget there, you know, for that benefit. And I'm sitting here trying to see if I can pull up a picture, because another thing that I carry, my bag's over there, but another thing that I carry in my bag is, you know, one of these, it's not a ratchet strap, but it is a tie down strap. You can pick them up for like $5, but it's like 12 feet long, and it can be used for so many things in life. You can use it for tying down things in the car or the truck, right? And I use it for that kind of stuff. But you can also use it in a pickle, you know, for things like, you know, tying the closer on a door close to be able to prevent that door from easily opening up, or put it around a door handle and stand 10 feet off to the side to be able to hold that door closed with that strap. And that's something that, you know, if I was a teacher hanging around school property, I'd have a couple of those on hand. It can easily be used. I've demonstrated this with teachers numerous times. You could take any piece of furniture that will fit across a doorway, and very quickly, even if you don't have a door lock, if this is a door that normally opens out that you can't jam from the inside, very quickly you can take one of these straps and put it around that piece of furniture, that chair that goes across it, the folding table that goes across it, the desk or whatever. As long as it goes across the door, the actual door jamb, you can quickly tie that piece of furniture to the door handle using this strap. In a matter of seconds, you have locked that door closed without a lock. You know, is that going to prevent someone from standing there all day long trying to get through it? No. Will it slow someone down? Absolutely. Will it? Highly likely, based on other sorts of circumstances that we've seen and with empirical evidence, or based on normal human behavior. Will it deter them and send them somewhere else? Probably so.
Yep. Make yourself a harder target. Make them go look for something easier.
Absolutely. You know, it's do what you can to make it harder for that attacker. The harder we can make it, the less opportunity that person has to hurt people.
Hey, I made it to the hotel before the show was over.
Nice. You're just about there at the end.
Yep.
So, you know, summarizing everything, like I said, I think we all agree, you know, that if you don't have to be there, you know, don't be there. But ultimately, if you do have to be there, then do everything that can be done to make it harder for that person. Send them packing, send them going somewhere else. And in the worst case event, if you have to fight, you know, be violent, be willing to be more violent, you know, than an attacker, and grab every advantage that can be grabbed, and do anything that you can do to be able to take that attack out of that person. Right?
They're not looking for a fight.
Right, exactly right. They're not looking for a fight. And that statistics have shown that time and time again, is that what typically stops active killers is suicide, which means by choice, which typically happens once law enforcement gets there, or someone forces them to stop. So based on the 2020 events, I haven't had a chance to read the circumstances of the event yet, but looking at the FBI data, and I had that up here just a second ago. Looking at the FBI data, there were, I think, 3 total events, if I'm not mistaken. I have to go back and look at it, where a non-law enforcement officer did something to stop the attacker. And I think in 2 of the situations, it was security guards, but in the 3rd situation, it was someone who was willing to take a step to actually stop the attack, and he stopped it before that person was successful in harming anyone, if I remember reading that correctly. Also part of this, and I'm reading this verbatim right here from the active shooter incident report from 2020 on the FBI's website. It says that, an unarmed citizen confronted the shooter in one incident. He was actually waiting in traffic. So this was a public environment incident, and he's waiting in traffic, and he intervened by striking the shooter with his vehicle, ending the shooting. There were 0 citizen casualties during that event. That actually wasn't what I was looking for, but so going back to a part of this event is the FBI has made it clear that they are still dedicating a tremendous amount of resources to train citizens, right? Is that, ultimately we have to recognize it doesn't matter what we're talking about in life. We're talking about an active shooter situation, home defense, robbery, murder, anything, right? Doesn't matter what you're talking about. There's a pretty good chance you're not going to have professional armed people there. You're not going to have law enforcement there to be able to intervene at that moment. Does that happen? Absolutely. But most people who face violence they're stuck to be able to take actions themselves. And so we can't depend on someone else in that moment. You gotta depend on yourself. You're the first responder, right? Is that if your child's at school and your child faces an attacker, your child is the first responder. They're the ones that get to make those decisions, in that moment, or that teacher is the one that makes that decision in that moment. And numerous times in the past 20 years where we've heavily tracked this kind of stuff, you have had people like teachers that are unarmed, that haven't had all kind of training, that yet jumped on the opportunity to stop the attack. Maybe they tackled the attacker, they fought away the gun, they deflected the firearm, but where you've had teachers intervene because they recognized at that moment that they had the opportunity to stop the attack. And that's about what a lot of it is the opportunities exist. Numerous times the opportunities exist. Guns aren't pointed at you. Guns run out of ammunition, guns malfunction. There's different opportunities that take place where that provides the moment to deliver the violence.
Well, into July in Texas, there was an active shooter attempted, and the crowd actually stoned the shooter to death. Do you remember that? It was like July 27th, 28th, something like that.
Yeah. Yes. And again, it's happened every single year with these active shooter incidents. Just about every single year, you've had multiple ones that have been stopped, by non-law enforcement personnel, which is just a private citizen or teacher or faculty member. It's just someone who was there who jumped on the opportunity to stop the attack.
Yeah, there was an incident. It's now probably a few years ago at a school. Where the shooter came in and one of the students, I think it was a football player, turned and tackled him. The other students escaped. He lost his life in the attack, but he stopped the shooter, and he just responded. It was. I think I don't know if he had any counsel from his parents in that process. I was not able to get details on it, but clearly it was in his character to seize the opportunity to protect those around him. And he did.
Yeah. And that's, would you say that you said he was a student, like a football student or something?
I think he was a football player. He was a student at the school, and I want to say it was a high school.
Yeah, the names Costello and Kendrick are coming to my mind on that event for some reason. Kendrick, obviously, that's my last name, and so I remembered maybe it's Kendrick Costello.
Yeah,
Was the hero in that event, if not very similar.
Yes.
Where he quickly jumps on the attacker, attacks the attacker. He unfortunately did lose his life, but he also saved several lives that day, because he was the one who, was willing to stop the attack.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty positive that's his name, Kendrick Costello.
I think you're right. That sounds familiar.
If not, like I said, it was another similar incident, to the one that you were mentioning.
But that's the reality of the situation, whether it's on the street, whether it's in the school, whether it's in the shopping mall. If you find yourself in a situation where you have to respond, there will be an opportunity. You have to be prepared to respond, and you have to respond with a greater amount of violence than most of us can conceive of in a relaxed state.
Yes. Yeah, definitely so. And that's where, like you said, it's about having a plan ahead of time. Don't be scared, don't leave the house in fear, but also have some things in your mind to know what you could do in the event that something like this happens. Play out the scenarios, right? Especially those of y'all that are tuning in tonight that are teachers or, are working on school properties. And that you feel that responsibility for other people. Start planning out the different scenarios in your mind. Well, if this took place, if I heard the shooting and it sounded like it was coming from there, or if the school, a lot of schools put in the broadcast systems to be able to quickly get the word out about that. So if the shooter's coming from this area or the shooter's in this building, what could I do to make it harder or to be able to get away from that attack? And sometimes, like I said, the best answer is, because I know these shooters in that building way over there, then my best course of action is leave the school property in that direction, kind of thing, or the other direction, right? Sometimes the best course of action is going to be to stay completely locked in that room and shut it down and make it look like no one's home, but also be prepared to fight in the event that something took place. And when I say leave buildings, a lot of times, you'll have people that talk about that. Well, what if there's another attacker waiting for you to come out? And, and that could be true, but statistically, that would be the anomaly of the anomaly kind of thing, right? Is that sometimes you do have multiple attackers, but it's rare. There's literally only been a couple of them out of the 300 plus events that have taken place. And typically speaking, when there have been multiple attackers, they've worked together, not tactically apart from one another. And you can't count on any of that, but you can also build that into, how we think about things.
And you can, and you really need to deal with the information you have. Those are the facts you have at that moment. So if there's another attacker, then your response may have to change. But you can't, I don't think you can formulate a response under the scenario that, there might be another attacker there, when you already know you've got one attacker to deal with. It's the same thing that we deal with on the defensive side. You might have multiple attackers when out on the street, but you have to deal with the one that you have at hand before you can deal with the others.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can what if it to death, right? You can what if it to the point of there's no response whatsoever. Right, you can what if yourself into a corner where you're like, well, might as well not do anything,
No,
Exactly.
Definitely so. Deryck, have you been monitoring the comments on Facebook? I know you're usually pretty good at that.
I can't. If I go off this screen, then all of a sudden you just see Deryck Poole's iPhone. So I'm pretty locked on.
I've got Facebook up there. There's no questions. One the incident we were talking about, they think happened. But I don't see any questions on Facebook at this point.
Yeah, I just pulled that up as well. All right, well, good. Well, guys, I think we've covered obviously a lot on the topic tonight. Is there anything think that we missed or want to revisit?
Not that I can think. There's a ton of stuff out there at PDN, like videos and stuff on active shooter response as well as a full-length DVD in the store. That's actually now 21st century electronic download, not just DVD.
Yeah, not just DVD. I don't even own a DVD player, so not just DVD, but like you said, you got the electronic, the streaming download. Especially y'all that are premium members that have jumped on the opportunity to get that, is that you get access to all of these DVD link videos that you talked about, plus discounts on other stuff. If you're not a premium member, then why not, right? It's just a couple dollars a year, and you get a tremendous amount of online education. It certainly doesn't replace getting out with a real instructor, building and developing skills, but there's a tremendous amount of stuff that can be learned through distance education, or of course can supplement the live fire training.
Yep, absolutely. And it seems, I don't know about you guys, but like the ammo thing, ammo prices haven't come down much, but I see more and more and more ammo actually available.
Yes. It's always good when you're starting to get emails, from your different dealers and stuff that says, hey, I've got this 9mm available for this price, right? You go back 6 months ago, you didn't get an email because they didn't bother sending out emails because it sold faster than they could mark it available.
Yep.
Yeah, and you're actually even seeing it on the firearm side too. You're starting to see some of that stuff there. So hopefully they're getting caught up. Certainly on some of the mainstream 9mm ammo, 40 cal, and 223, you're seeing more and more of that.
Yep, absolutely. Well, guys, coming to the end, I think we've had a good talk tonight. As mentioned, Deryck and Jeff are hanging out in Covington, Georgia, Atlanta this week for an instructor development class that is sold out. So they've got an exciting few days ahead. I will be, I'll be back in, I guess my next tour class will be Pensacola, Florida, here in just a couple of weeks, which is also instructor development. Just had an end user class in St. Augustine, 2-day defensive handgun, but I'll be back in the panhandle of Florida. And then after that, I got to go back and look at the calendar. I don't remember, but it should be another end user class somewhere in there. But I also have stuff going down in New Orleans. So if you're in the area, look me up. You can find me obviously in the comments on the streams that you're watching it through. We'll jump back into the comments. Feel free to tag me, or you can look me up on social media or find me over at bearcotraining.com. What about y'all guys? Wrap it out.
I'm same as always. Echo 5 Training on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You can find me there. Tag me in anything. I think this is actually my last tour class. Like, I'm pretty sure my next class after this is September in St. Augustine, but I think that's outside the scope of the actual training tour. Like before this, I just had Iowa, did my APH and carbine out there. So Iowa, once again, great host over there at Cedar Valley, Ernie at Cedar Valley Outfitters. Him and Julie and the rest of the gang were great couple of days. But I think this is my last tour stop for this year.
Awesome. Yeah, I forget it is kind of coming towards an end.
Yep.
Yeah, you can find me at Not Right Shooters on Instagram, Facebook, or at my website. We'll be posting some intuitive defensive classes here towards the fall. And, so if you've got questions, you can hit me up there. You'll find me here in Atlanta. May even see me down at St. Augustine joining the guys. So.
And Jeff, also, you got a Memorial 3-gun coming up, right?
Yeah, we have Memorial 3-gun in October. It's a 3-gun competition that supports Gold Star families. It really is a unique event. It's 10 stages shot over the course of 3 days. Each stage is dedicated to one soldier that has lost their life. Every stage has got the story, a poster, and information. We invite the families of the soldier. Most of the families will be there. We give them a tour. We teach them how to shoot. If they want to shoot the stage that's dedicated to their son. At the end of it, we have a big presentation. All of the money that's raised for Memorial 3-gun is given to the Gold Star families. Last year, we were able to give the $10,000 check to each of the 10 families. at the end of that match. The posters that are at each of the, or the banners that are each of the stages, every competitor and every worker for the match signs them. Those are also given to the families, and it's just, I've shot a lot of competitions over the years, and it's just one of the most impactful events that I've been associated with. I'm one of their ambassadors, and I wouldn't miss it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I had a guy in my in my carbine class in Iowa that was talking about the Memorial 3-gun. So when we get together, I'll see, you probably know him.
Okay, great.
Yeah, it's a fantastic event that y'all put on. Obviously, a really great cause. Glad to hear about the funds that y'all were able to raise last year. Look forward to helping out with it this year.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Again, if y'all got questions, comments, feel free to drop them in. We'll try to pay attention over the next couple of minutes and stay involved with that. If you want to find out more about the Personal Defense Network tour, you can through the website, see the different locations and instructors teaching it. Again, tonight's show is brought to you by Primary Arms Online. If you haven't been to the website, go check it out. It's actually pretty solid. Y'all have a great night.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.